Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we Masechtas Nazir daf Yud Dalid. We're going to begin on Yud Gimel and Beis, reminding us of the Mishnah which we saw. In the event that a person says, first of all, I'm going to be a Nazir, and then he also says that I will be a Nazir when I have a son. So if he began to do his first Nazirus, and then in the process while he was a Nazir, his son was born before the first Nazirus was completed, so he completes his first Nazirus, and then afterwards he's counts for that of his son, and that's what's done. On the other way around, however, it said that if, let's say, he first said I'll be a Nazir when my son is born, and then afterwards I'll be a Nazir. So if he begins to count for the second one, and then his son is born, so we say that he has to stop the counting in the middle, and he will count for his son's Nazirus, because that was the first declaration he said, and then he'll be Mashlim Eshalo. And the Chiddush we said, the fact that he's Mashlim is he doesn't have to start over his own count again. All he needs to do is complete it. So on this, the Gemara asked the following question. Boy Rava. Omar, person says, Hareini Nazir la'achar esim yoim. So he says, I'm going to be a Nazir after 20 days. And then he also says, Umiachshav me yoim. In 100 days of Nazirus from now. So, Mahu, what is the din? So if he's saying, first of all, I'm going to be a Nazir after 20 days, and then the second, so it's not happening yet, but then he also said, I'm going to be a Nazir now, in 100 days, I'm going to be a Nazir for 100 days, so what's the din? Kivan de halein meya, since he's already in the process of the 100 days, be'esrim lo shleiman, so then he can't finish the 100 within the 20 days, therefore lo chaylan. Therefore that aspect will not be chal. Says the Mafarish, miachshav umutu lishtos yayin, he's allowed to drink wine now. He has to wait until after the 20 days, and then he starts counting the 30 days. Umagaleach, and then he'll shave. So the point is that since his first statement was, I'm going to be a Nazir after 20 days, so doing the second part doesn't really seemingly help, and that's not going to be chal those first 20 days, because the stipulation, the first statement is going to be a Nazir after 20 days. So therefore, instead, you're not a Nazir at all until the 20th day. Then the first statement kicks in. You'll be a Nazir for 30 days. You'll shave, and then after you'll be a Nazir for 100. Odilma kivan deis le gidol seir lebesov chaylan. Since, says in the forest, ilu maschil lemisni nazirus kuf miachshav, you start counting the 100 from right now, akati miyatri lahu k'de gidol seir. So your hair is growing during that time. Hu tamnin, you'll have 80 days left. The isbahu gidol seir tuva. So even, let's say you do 20 days, then the 30, so you could maybe be mashlim the 80, maybe the first 20 do count, and you could be mashlim the last 80 days, because after those 80 days is a significant amount of time for your hair to grow. V'hilkach maschil machshav, start now, u'moy nechav yoim, count for 20, yachach moy nelamid yoim, so like the Seif of the Mishnah, you stop, and then you do the 30 days, yachach moy nepei yomim, now you only have to do 80 more days, kidol hashim nazirus rishayna, to complete the first one. So that's basically the question, is that, do we say that since the first Nazirus is going to kick in at day 20, maybe the second statement is not chal, and therefore you're not able to just immediately start doing those 20 days, but rather you just start the first Nazirus after 20 days, and then after that process is finished, then you start the 100. So that's question number one. But tiboile Nazirus mu'etas. So it says you can ask regarding a small Nazirus. Says Taisus, Perish stam Nazirus dehu shloshim yoim. A regular Nazirus is 30 days. So you can go into Amar Hareini Nazir la'achar esim yoim. A person says, I'm a Nazir for 20 days, but Nazir ata, and I'll be a Nazir now. So why don't we just say that one? Why does it have to be 100 days? So hashda v'yimna esrim yoim. Do we say that you can start the 20 days? Yaniach minyan zeh, V'yimna shloishim yoim. You'll stop, do the 30 days. V'yimna asar yomim. And all you have to do is the last 10. L'hashim naziris rishayna. V'lo yigalech oid. You won't shave ad shishim hashlomas shnehem until you completed both of them. So maybe you just don't do giluach because you can't do giluach on something which is only for 20 days. So maybe why don't we ask that? Why do we have to give the second case is for 100 days? The second statement is 100-day Nazirus. Make it a regular Nazirus. And you can say the same question. Do we stop it in the middle? So chada migoy chada kame boile. One within the other we're asking. In other words, you're right. And look at the Mefarish. Kigoyin di omer hareini nazir lachar chaf yoim achshav nazir stam dolamin nami b'chaf lo shalmi. You're not completing it. V'lo chayil odilma lo alter chayolin v'nigoleach achas akulan. So the answer is, we mentioned the case of 20 in 20 days, I'll be a Nazir, and for 100 days now, why 100 not a regular, is to teach us one within the other. Basically, it's saying that both of those are in fact are valid questions, but we can derive from both. Okay, so the case of it, the second one being regular Nazir, so you just wouldn't shave at all in between, and you'd only do the shaving at the end, because the last makeup of 20 days is not enough. It's not kedei gedil sar. It's not enough for hair to grow. Or if you're doing the 100-day one, which there'll be 80 days left, so you can actually do a giluach and then a second giluach after the 80 days. Im tim salerm naziris moetes. So if you want to tell me, when it comes to naziris moetes, which we said already, kivandia sar yamim hu diatrin, since you still have only have 10 days left over, lo solikle halena sara. We said that those days are not going to go up. Says the Mefarish leminyan nazirus, those won't count. Because there's not enough time for the hair to grow. Hilkach lo chayli miachshav, it's not going to work. Eli achar esrim yaskulim nois. You start counting after the 20 days. Shtei nazirus hemikolech bin minatayim. So maybe when it comes to nazirus moetes, we're not going to allow you to do this, that you'll do some of it first and then stop and then do the rest later, because it's not enough for the hair to grow. Vade nazir me yoim. However, when it comes to the second statement, it being 100-day nazirus, kivan iswahu tamnin yoimin, since you have 80 days, l'basayif salkin le lo. So basically the question is that maybe there is a difference, because since there's 80 days, if that's the situation, so that is enough of Gidol Seir. So therefore, maybe then that should be enough to be able to allow the hair to split it up. Let's look at question TA 19, TA 18. Omar Hareini Nozil Achar Esrim Yoim, Umiachshav Meya Yoim. So you say 100 days. Oshir Miachshav, and you say just Nazir Stam. So Matai Migalech, when you do the Giluach. So this is just Pashib Shot. If the one comes to 100 days, you're Migalech at the end of the Nazirus of after 20 days. L'achar Esrim, Dahainu Achar Chamishim Mamirasai. B'shum Migalech B'Saif. You can do, so in other words, after the first Nazirus, you have 20, then 30, so at day 50 when you cut, and then you do another Megaleach at the end after another 80. But when it comes to Nazir Stam, you can only be Megaleach B'Sof, because since if you would split it up, so then you can't do a second Giluach because it's not enough time. It hasn't been 30 days of growth. Which I think is the same question as maybe TB 19. Hareini Nazir Achar Chaf, U'mi'achshav mea yoim, ketza noigim in the zirusav, u'matam eglech u'mevi karbonoisav. So again, when it comes to 100-day, so we're noig 20 days, and then we're poisek, and then you count the 30 days in the zirus, shenadar, which starts after the 20 days, and then after those 30 days, you make galech and you bring carbon. Then you count another 80 days to finish up the 100. And you make galech again and you bring a carbon. Okay. So the Gemara now continues. The imtim saloimar chayil Chayle, maybe it's true that when it comes to the 100-day Nazirus, it's chal. In other words, you'll do the first 20 days, and then the regular Nazirus of 30 days will kick in, and then you'll bring the karbanos, you'll be magalech, then you'll complete the 80 afterwards. Omer, what if a person says, Hareini Nazir l'achar chaf yoim, I'll be Nazir after 20 days, but now instead you say, Imachshav Nazir oilam. You say you're a Nazir oilam. Mahu. Michayel le'olo. So if the second statement was to be a Nazir oilam, so over there it's different, because a Nazir oilam, a person doesn't do giluach unless your hair is getting very long. Says the Mefarish. When it comes to 100, Kivan, the Efsher lemimyanim yachshav esrim, you could count 20 now. The achar demainale shleishim, and then afterwards you do the 30. Efsher lemahadiv limnei tamnin, you can count the final 80. Mishum deika gidol seir. In those 80 days, your hair will grow. Uvasayv chaylu mihashta, so it's chal. Keep skipping a couple lines. Kivandil naziris oilam leisli hefsek. When it comes to Nazir's own, there's no hefsek. The heicha the omer miachshav me yoim, who the equal amemer the moine esser. Maybe in that situation you could do 20 and do the 80 afterwards. Yachach moine shleishim, yachach moine shmoinim. Devani chayil will alter. Maybe it's chal immediately. Machi omer me yoim. Once you say 100 days, mishum de kivan the isluhu hefsek was saif meya. There's an ending at the end of the 100. Once the 100 is over, the Nazirus is over. Hilka chacha nami efsher lemafsekinu metaychan. Since there is a stop after those 100, so maybe we'll say you could stop and break in the between. Avahacha the omer miachshav nazir oilam, the nazir oilam ino hefsek. It doesn't end. Kivan the ino hefsek lo paskinan luhu metochan. We may not allow you to split it up. Kivan do efsher lo hafsaka. Okay, so that's the svar of the difference. And then the Gemara asks again, Imtim Sulaimar Michael lo. Imtim Sulaimar Hacha Kivan the Efsher Litshule. Maybe when we're dealing with Nazir, even by Nazir Oilam, there is this element that you could undo the Nazirus going to a Chacham. So because of that, maybe that's what it's chayil. Says the Mefarish, Ahahu Nazirus Shekibo level Acher Esrim Lechalhu Kuhu Mahashta. The reason why it's chal is because at least you can have it removed. Whatever Omer Harini Nazir Shimshin La'acher Esrim Yoim. You say I'm going to be a Nazir Shimshin after 20 days. Miachshav Nazir Stam. Mao Hachal Eshel Shule. Here, when it comes to Nazir Shimshin, you don't have the ability to have it removed. So Michael, so maybe it's not Chal. Olo. So we asked the question by Nazir Shimshin, maybe there's a distinction that you cannot have it split up. Which is question 13. Mahia svara lepia yesh siba shetochel naziris miachshav yom hareini nazir achar beizam miachshav nazir oilam yoiser. Why would nazir oilam work? Yoiser min ha'omer hareini nazir shimshin. So why is nazir oilam better than nazir shimshin? So he said it's because when it comes to, if you say be'omer hareini nazir lachar chaf, I'm going to be nazir after 20 days. Lehishol leha, you could have it removed. The tachel nazirish and nadar me'achshav, and therefore the one that since that could be removed, so then now the second nazirus could take place. However, when it comes to nazir shimshin, there's no she'elah. It's not something which can be removed, so therefore maybe it's not going to be chal. Okay. Omer, if a person says hareini kamoisha Bishiva ba'adar mai. So look in the Mefarish. Demashma kamoisha shenifter b'shiva ba'adar. So Moshe died on the 7th day of the month of Adar. B'shilvu shasiyayin, and he didn't drink wine. Mi havi lashon nazirus halo. So this is just a stam question. Is that a language of you making yourself into a nazir? So pasha minayu, we can at least answer kidamaise, as we brought down. Hareini nazir la'achar asim yoyim. I'm going to be a nazir after 20 days. And then you also say umeachshav mea yoim. And then from now will be a Nazir 100 days. So he said moine esrim. You start the 20. You start out at the 100 right away. V'yachach moine shloishim. Then you do 30. V'yachach moine shmoinim. And you finish up. Kedil hashem naziris rishayna. In order that you should finish up the Nazir Rishayna of 80 more days. Nitma b'yamei b'nai. If let's say he became Tamei b'yamei b'nai, so says the Mefarish, Hai di omer hareini Nazir, al Nazir kishiyali ben, when I have a son, ben Nazir stam, and you also become a Nazir stam. So hiskel moine es shalo. You start counting your regular Nazirus, v'ad shalo hishlim es shalo noildo ben. And then all of a sudden, in the middle, your son is born. So meniach es shalo. So since the first statement you said was about the son, so you have to stop the one about yourself. Moina es shel benoi. This is the Mishnah, right? You count starting for the one for your son. Im nitma b'toich yomim halolu. If let's say you became tummy during those days, that's what it means. Nitma b'yamei bano. Shemana livno, the days that you're counting for your son. So Rav Yochanan Omer Seiser. Rav Yochanan says it undoes his whole Nazirus. So again, he started counting, let's say, 15 days, and the son is born, so he has to complete those 15 days afterwards. The question is, if he became Tameh, not during that part, but this a second part of this Nazirus, this time when it's for the son, is that going to be Seiser everything? So Rav Yochanan says, it's Av Oisin Yomim, says Mefarish, Shimon Kfar al Shalo. Even the days in which he counted for himself will also be removed. Since he's not able to shave during that time, because he didn't finish the Nazirus, it's Nazirus Arich Dami. It's like one long Nazirus, therefore Seiser Sakoil. That's Rav Yochanan sheet. It's not going to be Seiser. So Rav Yochanan Seiser Nazirus Arich, as we explained in the Mefarish, it's as though it's like one long Nazirus, because as he can only cut his hair at the end once. He's not going to remove that element of Nazirus because didei l'chud u'deberei l'chud. His Nazirus and his son's Nazirus, he's the Nazir, but because the son was born, that second element of Nazirus is separate, and therefore, even though it would be Seiser, that element of Nazirus, but he's not going to be Seiser those days that he did before. As we continue to Yudalad Medbeis. Nitma b'yamei sarato. So let's look at both the Mefarish and Taisus. Hayan Nazir, let's say you became a Nazir, v'nitztara, and you got saras. If you made saras, so nitma l'mesim. And during the days of saras, you became tamei meis. Says Taisus, I'm a hareini Nazir mehayoyim. A person says, I'm going to be a Nazir right now. The hiskil limnais Nazirus. He starts counting as a Nazir. Shimei chaluto enu oil Nazirus. The days of Saras don't count as the days of Nazirus. The gam enu soiser. So the Gemara says like this: Rav Yochanan Omer soiser, Shachash Omer enu soiser. Rav Yochanan Omer soiser. If again you became tummy during Yemei Sarasai, which is not part of the count, it's a separate counting of days. But why is it? Why? Because the hub is Zirus Koi. He's still in the middle, and therefore it's all connected. Which is very similar to what we said before, that because they're separate days, so even though it's true he became Tamei Mace during days of Saras, but that's not linked to his times of a Nazir. If we mention the first case, where he became Tamei b'yamei benoi, the times of his son, so maybe Di'in mar b'hach kamaisa b'hi omer Rav Yochanan soiser shem Nazirus achasi, because it's Nazirus. Okay, he made two separate statements of Nazirus, but it's still, he's a Nazir. He's a Nazir on himself, and a Nazir because of his son, but he's still a Nazir in both situations. So it makes more sense to link them together. But so Behi Omer Rav Yochanan says Shem Nazirus Achasi Aval Baha Ema Model Reish Lakish. the Nazir l'chud v'saras l'chud. Here, it has not during the time of Nazirus. It's the time of Saras. So therefore, maybe it shouldn't be Saiser the days of Nazirus. Maybe only there does Rish Lakish say that, because they're two separate things. One's Saras and one is Nazir. Nitma b'yom Gidul Seir. What happens if you became Tameh on the day that you have Gidul Seir? Says Mefarish, Kegoin Shekibol Lem Naziris Meyoim. You accepted Naziris for 100 days. V'chi Mana Shivim Nitzdera. And then after these days, you got Saras. V'chi Nitar. Then when you became Tar, Gileach Tegalachas L'Tsaras. So you're going to cut your hair for the Saras. V'yakati Pashu Min Hameya Shleishim Yoim. You still have 30 more days. The Isbahu Gidul Seir, for your hair to grow. V'nitma b'yom Gidul Seir. And your hair, you came tummy during that time. Haynu b'yom Meya Shaboy. Sholem Gidul Seir. Avol b'im Saiser Shivim Shalifnei Hatzaras Pligi. Okay. Rabbi Eber Eno Saiser. So Rav says it's not Saiser. I feel Rav Yochanan the Amar Saiser. Haynu b'yom the Koyman Nazirus Gidul Seir Mishlam Nazirasu. So when it came to that situation of Gidul Seir, the hair is already grown. So let's read this a little slower. Eino Saiser. I feel Rav Yochanan Saiser. Even according to Rav Yochanan, who says that is Saiser, over here, since you became Tameh on the day of the growth of the hair, that's only Heicha de Koyman Nazirus. That's why you're still a Nazir. But Gidul Seir Mishlam Nazirus, so you've already completed Nazirus at that stage. So therefore it's not Saiser. Shmuel Emer Saiser. I feel Reish Lakish de Emer Eno Saiser, Hasam Shtei Nazirus. That's because there was two different Nazirus. Since there were two separate Nazirus, one is not going to be Saiser, the other one. But Hacha Chada Nazirusa. It's one Nazirus, and therefore it's going to be Saiser. Even B'yom Gidul. Let's look at Taisus. Nitma b'yom Gidul Seir perish. Aymer hareini Nazir shloshim yom, for 30 days. Ukshemana chaf min Naziruso, when you counted 20 days, gilchuhu listim al karchai. And Shai says that someone shaved your head, right? The hashtalu yuchol galech b'yom shloshim Nazirus. You can no longer shave on day number 30 because you have to wait 30 days, and your hair is now only growing for 10 days. You'll have your karbanos from the day that the bandits shaved your head. Din gidol pachas m'shloishim yoim. V'hiskil halamid ukshemana sara. Fine. So he's just giving an interesting point. It's like you just have to wait practically to wait until your hair grows, but really you've completed your main Nazirus. Okay. Good. Let's go weiter. Rav Chisda, Hakol Moedim, that everyone agrees, She'im Kiddush Sar Badam Eino Takana. Says that if literally you're sanctified the hair by Zrikas Adam, there is no remedy for that. Says the Mefarish. B'yoyim Lamed Aleph, on the 31st day, Sarach Lehavir Karbonosov. We know that you have to bring Karbonos, Liskalachas, and you have to shave Achar Karbonosov, after you bring the Karbonos. Im kfar nizrak adam, if let's say you already sprinkled the blood, kishenitma, v'yadayin lo gileach, but you didn't shave, she'en lo takan lo hatir. There's no heter anymore. Kivan delim nois pamacheres levi carbon achari afshar. We're not going to have you count again and bring more karbanos. The carbon echad hu maybe. V'lo karbanos. You're only supposed to bring one, not two. Kvar heavy carbon echad. You already brought a carbon. In oilolo, but it doesn't go up for you. The hakfar nitma, your tamei lefikach ein lo takana. That's the reason why it's no takana. Ilibanaman, Aliba the Rabbi Lezer Kivandi Emer Tegalachas Ma'akeves. He says that it's Ma'akev, so Taich Molois he lister. We should say that's considered to be Taich Molois, and it should be lister completely. Says the Mafarish, Lishtos Yain B'Sech Mulois, Korean Bay, Lister Mashamana V'Laisi Carbon Acher. So if in fact you're Soiser, then the first Karbanos just weren't valid. But now you should be able to bring more Karbanos. So don't tell me it's Ino Takana. They'll leave it Rabbanan. Ha'amri Tegalacha Slo Ma'keves. But they say that it's not Ma'akev. La'oilam leave it Rabbanan. Umay Ino Takana Eno Takana L'Mitzvah Skiluach. It's not Ma'akev, but there's no more mitzvah. You lost that opportunity. It says Mafar Shilkach Eno Takana L'Geleach B'Tahara El M'Geleach B'Toma. Amrav Yosi Rabbi Chanina Nazir Shekol Yamav. Nazir, who completed his days, says the Mafarish Yimei Shloishim, he finishes 30 days. Shesarach Lahevi Karbanasav, and he needs to bring a carbon. Nitma, and he becomes Tami, then Loika al Hatoma, then he will get Malkus. The Elu Loika al Hiskalachas, but he will not get Malkus for the shaving. Says Mafarish, let's say even though you're supposed to shave afterwards, let's say he shaved before he brought the karbanos, or if let's say he drank wine before he brought the karbanos, he will not get malchus. So why would he get malchus in a situation where it was the 30th day and he was supposed to bring karbanos, but he became Tameh beforehand? Even including the days afterwards, which means that if he didn't bring the carbon, he will still get Malchus. It'll be like the days before, so he's going to get Malchus. If it's like before, he finished everything, if he shaved before the carbonos, until everything is done, he's not supposed to shave. So why don't we say the same din he should get malchus for shaving at the wrong time? Furthermore, kol yemei nizro mikol asher yasim gefen hayayin lasos yomim shali acher mulois ki yomim shalifnei mulois. Again, we're saying from this pasuk that you should get malchus in that situation too. As we continue to test Vav Aleph, no shani hacha. It's different over here when it comes to Tumah, that you give Malchus. The Amar Achmana, the Tameh Rosh Nizro. Mish Nazro Toli Lo Baroishai. Only, it's referring to someone who's only missing a haircut, but still don't get Tameh. Says Mafarish, Mish Nizro Toli Lo Baroishai. Damashmer Shatola Kosav Esatoma. He hasn't shaved yet. If you haven't finished the days, as long as he hasn't shaved his hair, Meisvei Nazir Shekol Yamav also Galeach V'Lishtos Yain L'Tamla Mesim. You're not supposed to. V'Im Galeach V'Shos Yain V'Nitla Mesim. How's this Sefek Zarboyim? It says Beferish you do get Malchus in that situation. Tiyofta. So in fact it's the Tiyofta of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina, who, as he said, he made a distinction and said that if a person would drink wine, or if you would drink wine before you brought the karbanos, or if you would shave before you brought the karbanos, you wouldn't get malchus. It says over here, Beferish you would get malchus, so in fact it's a Tiyofta. Okay. Question 14. Kinisar badam ein lo takana inin ma ein lo takana. What does that mean? So we end up saying l'maskana l'mitzvah giluach. That's referring to the sheet of the Rabbanon, that the mitzvah of giluach you lose out on, even though it is not ma'akev. Okay, let's see, maybe one more question. TA19. Nitma b'yom gidol seir. Ma nikri yom gidol seir uma v'im seiser kishen nitma. Got it completely wrong. So Taisa said, "Im gochu listim." Again, if bandits shaved your head, sarach lahavdin lamed yoim ad sheyagdol sa'aro. You have to wait until your hair grows. Av shesiyim nazirusa b'sayich lamed. Even if you already finished nazirus, upliga maroi i b'chiyah gam nasaiser. In that situation, it's a machlokas tanoim whether or not it is saiser adkan.